This is the third in a series of videos I'm doing on bad therapy. That is, things that some therapists do on purpose and not by accident that are actually detrimental, that are harmful in therapy. Today I'll talk about another supposed benefit widely promoted on social media that, perhaps to your surprise, actually hurts therapy and the sufferers who seek it. I'm Dr. Stephen Reedboard. As a psychiatrist and psychiatric educator with eons of experience, I challenge oversimplified or misleading messages you see everywhere on social media. If you like what I'm doing here, please like this video and subscribe to More Than Meds. It may surprise you that the ready availability of a therapist is a double-edged sword. Therapists are professionals you turn to in times of crisis or emotional upset. Wouldn't it be a benefit, not a drawback, a feature, not a bug, to have a therapist who's available all the time, ideally 24/7? When you're upset, wouldn't it be great to be able to text or maybe call your therapist any time of the day or night and get the support you need? In fact, some online therapy companies offer this as a kind of perk, or maybe even their main business model. Usually that you can text any time and your therapist, or maybe if not therapist, your peer counselor or other support person will get that text and text you back, hopefully soon, although not necessarily. In an effort to keep up with the marketing onslaught of well-funded therapy startups that fill the airwaves with ads promoting easy availability at all times. Even some private practice therapists attempt to offer this. They often think of themselves as putting their clients first and being willing to sacrifice themselves on behalf of their profession and their clients. Sometimes you'll hear licensed therapists or unlicensed coaches on social media talk proudly of being on call anytime for their clients. There are a few problems with this, and I'm here to tell you about them. The first is that our aim in psychotherapy is to make ourselves obsolete, one patient or client at a time. I talk about that in some detail in this video here. We do want to be supportive and ease our clients' emotional distress in their time of need, but we also aim to give clients or patients the tools to manage their own feelings. That's a popular way to say it, although I don't actually think that's the best way to describe psychotherapy. I talk about that in this video. Another way to say it, coming more from the psychodynamic therapy tradition that I practice, is that we aim to relieve clients of their own inhibitions or self-imposed weakness that gets in the way of them managing their own feelings. Either way you put it, we want clients to be able to eventually take care of themselves. Being available whenever needed or desired is too much of a good thing. It doesn't promote self-reliance and independence. This parallels early childhood development. A young child, a toddler, needs to know that their mother or other primary caregiver is nearby for that sense of emotional attachment and support. It gives them a sense of safety, but they also need to venture out and explore. They need to learn to separate and individuate. That's our term for basically being able to separate from the mother or caregiver and to be their own individual. In healthy development, this literally shifts back and forth in early childhood. The child is attached, but becoming independent. Without venturing out and exploring, without learning to be independent, the child ends up too dependent on caregivers, never learning how to be their own person, more like an appendage or a parasite on the parent. Those kids eventually grow up and maybe come to see someone like me to help them grow an independent personhood that they lacked as children. You can use the same logic with adult therapy. We want to develop a strong therapeutic alliance. That's our term for a strong bond between the therapist and the client so that we're both working together and not at cross purposes with each other. But the patient or client needs to venture out and explore and even exercise some independence. There's a sense of accomplishment when a patient returns the next week and says, I was inclined to give you a call a couple days ago when I was emotionally upset, but, I decided ultimately I could handle it myself. That's a good feeling, right? And really, our aim, our hope, is that the client will eventually soon come to feel that they can go every week without calling us or contacting us between sessions, and ultimately, at the end, be able to say, I'm able to handle everything myself these days, and maybe it's time to wrap things up. Even worse, extreme availability fosters an unrealistic fantasy, make-believe idea that the therapist only exists for that particular patient, that they have no outside life, that they have no other obligations, that they certainly don't have any other clients, that they are only there for that one client or patient. This fantasy may actually encourage the client to contact the therapist even more between sessions. In contrast, psychotherapy always aims to help clients or patients see life more realistically, not less. We don't want to foster or encourage an unrealistic fantasy. Even our catalog or list of defense mechanisms that we refer to is organized along how much of reality the person needs to ignore or throw away in order to use that defense mechanism. For example, a person who's in denial about their own feelings is throwing away a lot of reality in order to have that defense, whereas a person who's using humor as a defense doesn't need to ignore as much reality about what's really happening. Promoting a fantasy of endless availability and total devotion encourages the client to ignore reality. A final major drawback of extreme availability is the effect that it has on the therapist. It's initially a source of pride. I'm there 24/7 for my clients. The lack of boundaries and the erasing of any personal time eventually becomes a burden. It leads initially to denial by the therapist. Oh, that's no problem. I'm happy to talk to you anytime. And eventually it leads to self-criticism or even self-condemnation. I'm a bad therapist for being irritated that my client just called me 3 times so far tonight. I used a provocative word when I was referring to a toddler never becoming independent of its mother or caretaker. I said that that young child could be like an appendage on the parent or even a parasite, which is a strong word. But the thing is, highly dependent adult patients who also prefer support on demand instead of self-reliance, they too can start to seem like parasites. The therapist can't help but wonder, when will this ever end? When will they ever grow a spine? And the answer is never, because the therapist set up the conditions to promote just the opposite. Good psychotherapy occurs within a therapeutic frame, a set of conditions that creates a boundary around the therapy relationship. That's why therapy sessions are held at scheduled times, and they're held ideally on a regular schedule, a regular basis for a set amount of time and under consistent conditions. This frame, which is firm but not entirely rigid, is predictable and reassuring and offers a sense of safety in the therapy. It's actually reassuring for both parties, but especially for the client. The client needs to know that they're truly and honestly welcome during their session time. Haphazard therapy that occurs at inconsistent times and under inconsistent conditions, it damages that therapeutic frame and leads to a kind of insecure attachment. The client never really knows if the therapist wants to talk to them. So yes, clients can and should contact their therapists at rare moments of emotional crisis between sessions. We all want our patients or clients to do that, of course. But then the effort should be to get things back on track as soon as possible back to that therapeutic frame that allows psychotherapy to work. We don't want to encourage an unrealistic fantasy that leaves both parties angry and dissatisfied and leaves the client anxious and dependent. Please comment on promises of therapist availability. Let me know about other bad things therapists do. Maybe I'll do a future video on them. Please like this video, but only if you really like it. Please subscribe if you have not already. And this video is part of a series, a playlist I'm doing on bad therapy and bad therapists, and there's the playlist. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.